Greetings and welcome to JALT 2020 online community of teachers and learners. I'm here in the mind and body space, and I'm just going to give you a nice big welcome right now. Welcome. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself before we begin. My name is Sarah Mulvey. I'm originally from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and I'm a long-term permanent resident here in Japan. I've been an educator, university educator for over 2 decades, and branched off a while ago into wellness. I'm part of a group called PAWS, Publishing and Wellness Services, and I dabble a little bit in both, but really my focus is on the wellness part under the name JEXPAT Network. J is for Japan, expat is for expat, and I do guidance, counseling, and coaching predominantly with foreign women here in Japan. I think my experience and my background in neuro-linguistic programming, cognitive behavioral therapy, all of these things come together, as well as my experience of living in Japan for so long. They come together to help not only educators, but people maybe having some cultural issues coming to live in Japan. So that's who I am, and I'm going to use some of the things I know from my NLP experience and my CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy experiences to make this mind and body space hopefully a helpful place for you to go forward in your teaching life. The fact that you're watching me here on video rather than in the actual space at the mind and body space in Tsukuba is testament to the times we're living in right now. My friends and I have taken to calling it in a very Game of Thrones kind of way, the time of the COVID. And it is indeed the time of the COVID, and it's changed how we're doing things. I'm really glad that you are here. My goal during this short video is to help you find focus. And I know it may have been difficult in these past few months to find the focus you need to do things in various parts of your life. So we'll be doing that. We'll be looking at different parts of your life and honing in on at least one of those areas. And I'll be helping you to set goals. That's my goal for this video. And you'll learn a few relaxation techniques as well. I think something we all need during this time. So the next slide, we're going to do exactly what I said. We're going to look at focus. In previous years, the mind and body space at JALT was an actual physical space where you could go to find focus. Some people went there simply to take a breather between presentations, and others came for presentations like my own regarding coaching and tips to help you relax. And there were things like Tai Chi, a bit of massage. It was a place just to come, again, to focus. And I hope at this point in time, you're in a place where you can focus. If you're not, I recommend just press pause. And if you can, try to find a private spot or space where you'll have quiet for a few minutes. And I've found that noise canceling headphones, in the grand scheme of things, we can't always find a private spot, but a good set of headphones can help us do that. So if you're in a quiet space right now, let's continue. If not, create one, just press pause, create that space for you so that we can find focus. So we all know that the time of the COVID has brought with it coronavirus, but it's also brought a high level of stress for people all over the world. We're all feeling it in different ways. But one of the biggest catalysts for that stress is the fact that we don't see an end. So if we have a stressful meeting that we need to go to and we build up to it and say, oh, I don't want to go, we also know that there is an end time to what might seem like an endless meeting, but we know it will end. It's the same for other stressful events in our lives as well. They have beginnings and they have ending points. So that, at the very least, gives us something to look forward to. With this, as we look at that arrow, the red arrow, it's going up, 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 up. And if we look at the beginning of the arrow, it seems to be a flat point. So we might have this image that we had no stress before this very stressful event happened. And what we're seeing actually at the beginning of that arrow is a plateau of another stressful moment that we had before. So it was going up, 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 plateaued, and then up again. So the plateau before the stress we're having now was just the ending point of another stressful event. And it's all very subjective, the feelings of stress that we have. But what this tells us that there will be a plateau. We're not sure when that will happen. And I think that already we are finding ways of dealing with that stress. If we compare ourselves back to, let's say, March to where we are now, we found coping mechanisms to help us. And that, again, is why I'm here, is to just give a couple of tools. And one of the most basic tools is at your disposal, and it's something that we sometimes forget to do. And I'm going to talk to you in the next slide about what that is. Way back when, in the time way before the time of the COVID, when I was a recent graduate from my undergrad, so we're talking early 90s, my first job was a flight attendant. And for 4 weeks, we had really intense training. The training to be a flight attendant has very little to do with serving coffee and tea, and so much more to do about safety. One of the more memorable parts of that training was the flight simulations that we'd have. And one of them was being in the perspective of a passenger, being seated in the plane during high turbulence. So I was seat belted in with my other trainees in their various seats, and the simulation started. The plane shook, things were flying, drinks and things were on the floor. And some of us had dummies of kids beside us. And I was one of the attendants who had a child, a dummy beside me. And the oxygen mask fell down. And all of us who had the child beside us, thought we were being very clever and very thoughtful. And we indeed gave the oxygen mask to the child first, and then gave it to ourselves. In that portion, we were given, a 0, because that's not what you're supposed to do. And now we're in an age of flying. Everybody's heard the recordings before, they've seen the demonstrations, and they know very well, or you should, I hope, that you give the oxygen to yourself first. You are first, and then the child. But in our young minds, we were in our early 20s, long time before any of us really flew very much. We were thinking, you got to give it to somebody else first. Now that we know, give ourselves oxygen first, that applies outside the airplane cabin as well. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. Breathe. It might seem in the 21st century, the woke decade that we're in now, like a trite and maybe overused suggestion to just breathe. But it is useful. We're, of course, breathing all the time. That's why we're here. But are we really breathing? Are we giving ourselves that oxygen mask and taking in really deep, lung expanding breaths? And I'm not talking that you've got to breathe like that all the time, but particularly when you're in the middle of stress, is to find that focus again, and this time the focus is on your breathing. And I'm saying just 60 seconds out of every hour. So 1 minute out of every hour to just breathe. Because what you might find, and it might have happened to you before, you're in the middle of something, maybe making a work document, or you're in the middle of a meeting, and you realize that your teeth are clenched, you're up like this, and it's really shallow breaths. You're not getting oxygen to your brain, or enough anyways. So I'm going to invite you now to do a couple of things, and one of them is to first just relax your shoulders, just let everything just come down. And next, I'll ask you, if you're comfortable to do it, to just close your eyes. So you're feeling very comfortable, your shoulders are relaxed, your eyes are closed, and you're listening to my voice, and the instructions are very simple. First, I'm going to ask you to breathe in deeply through your nose for a count of 5. So why don't we try that right now? So breathe in. And now let that big breath out of your mouth in a whoosh. That's right. So if your eyes are still closed and your shoulders are very relaxed, I'd like you to try that again. I'm going to take a nice deep breath in through your nose. Your lungs are expanded. That's right. And now let it out in a whoosh. And you might already be feeling that sense of relaxation. And that happened in less than a minute. So my suggestion for you in our quest to find focus and to lessen anxiety is to breathe, because it's one of the basic, most simple things we can do for ourselves is to give ourselves a bit of oxygen when we're in that tense situation or something that's causing anxiety. And what I'm asking you to do is to make it a habit. Habits don't take that long to form. So if you try to do this, let's say once an hour for the next few days, even if you do it 3 or 4 times during the day, it's going to become a habit. When you find that moment when you're stressed, your shoulders are up, you're tense here, and you might even have a bit of a headache because you're not getting the right amount of oxygen to your brain. And this is what happens during times of anxieties, that we're not breathing properly. So again, it might sound trite and overused to say just breathe, but that's exactly what I'm telling you to do. Just breathe. 60 seconds out of every hour that you're in these situations, be it at work, at home, wherever you might be, just breathe. So those deep breaths require only about a minute every hour of the day, but I'm going to go a little bit further and say you deserve a little bit more of your time, and I'm going to recommend 15 minutes. Not necessarily 15 minutes every day, but that would be great. But for the time being, at least set aside 15 minutes once a week for you to focus on something. And what I'm going to do in the next few slides is provide an area of focus for you. And this is what I would do with my own clients. It's focusing on areas in your life that you feel need a bit more attention because maybe it's been lacking. There's various things that have been happening these past few months that have created maybe more anxiety, more stress. Some things get neglected. And that's what we're going to go and do in the next few slides, is focus on some of those areas that need help. So in the grand scheme of things, 15 minutes once a day, or what I'm proposing right now is even just once a week, 15 minutes devoted to your own self-care is really not that much. But what often happens is other things come up, particularly when other people need us or need our focus, need our attention. And I have no doubt that if a close friend, if a loved one, if your spouse, if your child, your coworker, if they came to you and said, hey, I really need your help for about 15 minutes, can you help me? I have a feeling you would. So what I'm proposing here is that you take those 15 minutes for yourself. And if you look on the slide there, it gives a very good message that you need to take care of yourself first. It's very much like that oxygen mask. So of course, help the others in your life. That's natural, and it's a good thing to do. But for 15 minutes, and right now I'm proposing once a week, 15 minutes once a week, I want you to hone in and focus on area of your life that might need a little bit of attention right now. So how do you choose which areas to focus on in those 15 minutes? Well, that's what I'm here for. We're going to break it down, starting with 8 areas, 8 possible areas, and I'll tell you what they are right now. They're represented by a mnemonic. You can see on the slide there, camp here. So each of those letters represents an area in your life. So the C is career, the A is amour. And we're using amour because we're talking about romantic relationships, because relationships are definitely a part of life, but we need to separate them between the romantic and just the regular relationships. So A is amour for romantic relationships. M is money. P is personal development. H is health. E is environment. R is relationships. And the final E is enjoyment. And these are all very, very important parts of our life that deserve attention, and that some of them might not have been receiving the attention that they need in this past little while. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at them more closely. So now this is the part where you're going to get a little more active. If you have a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, I want you to draw a circle. And this is the wheel of life. And on this wheel of life, it's going to be cut into 8 equal pieces. And now you see, that's where the camp here will fit in. Career, amour, money, personal development, health, environment, relationships, and enjoyment. Each is represented by one portion of that wheel, and that's your wheel of life. And it's very easy to make, so just draw a circle, put it into 8 pieces, and then put your Phere around that circle, and that's your personal wheel of life. And this is what you'll be doing in this 15 minutes that you set aside each week, is making up a wheel of life. It's an ever-changing thing. So once a week is really not that much, is it? So let's do that right now. Make your wheel and put the pieces down. So on your wheel of life, you now have the 8 letters put in a circle around it. And if you look on the slide, you can see my wheel of life here. Now, the next part is about providing percentages of satisfaction. So for each part, you're going to ask yourself the question, how satisfied are you in the area of? So for example, how satisfied are you in the area of career? And it's going to be a percentage. So if things are going wonderfully well in your career, maybe you started a new job and things are exciting and fun, you might have a high percentage up in the 90s, 95s. I always recommend to not have 100% because, well, there's always room for improvement and things we can do. So looking at each part, you simply ask yourself, how satisfied am I in the area of? And again, you're only giving yourself 15 minutes to do this project, so don't spend too much time, because a little later on we'll be focusing more on different areas. So for the time being, it's just a quick assessment, giving a percentage to each part. Again, you don't want to give it a full 100, and generally people aren't at 0 or 5%. Unless it's a really serious situation, then of course it can be a very low percentage. But have a peek right now, take a few moments and fill in the wheel with percentages. You might want to take a moment actually until the next slide to see how it's done. Some people fill it in different ways. So I'm going to show you my example in the next slide, and then you can start filling in yours too. Now, if you want to have a quick peek at my wheel of life before you start putting in your percentages, I'm just going to have a look over here so I can see mine. And we can see I filled in my percentages, and a very full one. For example, if we look at amour, I have it at 90%. My relationship with my husband's very good. We're happy, things are going well. So that's at 90. But then if you go around a little bit and look at personal development, that is at 50. Because in the time of the COVID, I haven't been able to get out to workshops or be a part of conferences and things like that in the same way I would have in the past, of course. So that puts me at about a 50 when I ask myself, how satisfied am I in that area? Another area we can see it is quite low is enjoyment. And this is where we recognize how things are really interconnected. So if I focus just on the personal development and see it's 50, without understanding that my enjoyment level is also at 50, I wouldn't have necessarily made that connection, that I get a lot of my enjoyment out of the connections I make with people, particularly in my area of work as a coach and as a guidance counselor, but also in other areas. I'm also a musician. So my level of enjoyment has gone down because I can't get out to play the music that I usually do. I'm usually out at least once or twice a month in various venues. So my level of enjoyment has gone down, which was connected to my personal development, which is also connected to relationships, which I have down at 60. In regular times, that would be up at 90. But the relationships with my friends, the relationships with my family have gone down somewhat. And I really miss that. So I've put it down at 60. It might even be a 55 or a 50. And hopefully that's going to change soon. But it is an important connection that I made, that, yeah, these are the areas that are lower, and they are all really interconnected with each other. So that's why it's important to look at the wheel as a whole first, and then next step, we're going to look at parts a little more closely. And remember, I'm taking a bit of time to do this with you, and once you get it as a habit, you will be able to do this activity in 15 minutes. So go for it right now, look at your wheel, and fill in the percentages much like I have. And of course, your percentages will be different. And then we're going to look a little more closely in the next slide. Now the next step. Looking at your wheel, you can see it's a bit topsy-turvy probably. Some are quite high and some percentages are quite low. The next part is honing in. In my regular coaching practice, when we have a bit more time, I probably choose 3 areas. But in the 15-minute one, I'm going to ask you to choose just one area. And you might want to jump immediately on the one that has the lowest percentage, and that's an option. But why not look at it as each piece on its own and decide which one kind of jumps out at you the most? It might be the one with the lowest percentage, but it might be one that you're kind of thinking, wow, I've neglected that area a little bit and I want to look at it, because it's a domino effect. Whichever area you do decide to look at, to hone in on, to focus on, it will have an effect on the other areas ultimately. So take a moment, hone in, and I'd just like you to put a circle around the area that you want to focus on for the next part. Now, the Wheel of Life has a goal. We have a reason for doing this, and the goal of the Wheel of Life is setting goals. So you've chosen your area. If you look at mine, I've circled career. It's not necessarily the lowest, but it's something that jumped out at me when I was looking at my wheel today. I thought, which one needs my attention right now? And I chose career. You can see the circle there. And what I ask or say to myself is, I want to set a goal in the area of career. And we'll go on to the next step now. So your circle is there, and that is where you'll be setting a goal. So an important part of setting a goal, well, there's actually quite a few important parts. It's not just simply putting it out there and saying, I want X, or I hope for Y to happen. They don't just simply happen. There is the protocol, there's criteria to follow. So let's have a look. One of the first things, starting with the Wheel of Life, is that we had the percentage. So if it was, let's say, 55%, and you've chosen that area, is to think of the percentage you would like it to be. So if your area in relationships was 55%, and you say, part of my goal setting is I would like it to be at 95, and that's fair enough. So keeping that in mind, that is part of goal setting. I'd like you to look at the slide here, and this is about smart goal setting. And any goal you make, if it follows this pattern, has a much better chance of being achieved. So it's called SMART for a reason. Everybody likes these mnemonics. Your goal, when you state it, is specific. Okay, it's well defined. It's measurable. So there are precise amounts, regardless if it's in a financial amount, in time, anything like that. If you can attach a number to it, it's part of a SMART goal. It's attainable. So it's possible. It's realistic. Sometimes we make these goals that are just too far out there, just a bit too big for them to be realistic and that they can possibly happen. So please think about that too as you set your goals, that it is a realistic goal. It's relevant. It's important to your life right now. And I say that because it's fine to make long-term goals. So if you're age 42 right now and you say, well, I want my retirement home to be in Kailua, Hawaii, which is one of my goals, long-term goals, it's not really relevant for this right now, for the time of the COVID that we're in. So what I'm asking you for this goal on this Wheel of Life is that it's relevant and important for your life as it is in this moment. So long-term goals is a whole other exercise. So this right now, short-term, it's relevant for the here and the now. And time-bound. So it has an exact deadline on it, and the more specific, the better. And one final thing that's not here on the SMART slide is that it's positively stated. When we set goals, talking about what we don't want to happen is not the best way to set a goal. Focusing on what we want to happen is the best way to make a goal. So positively stated should be part of your SMART goal making. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you my goal. I'd circled career. I want to bring the percentage up to 90. Here are some of the, what I wrote down for mine. Something that happens when we make goals is we start getting a flood of ideas about what we want to happen, and the goal ends up being a paragraph. So part of the SMART goal is, being as concise as you can be. So I recommend putting it in a sentence. I also mentioned about stating it positively. So words like I will, I'm going to are far better than talking about what you don't want. So an example maybe during this time of the COVID, when there was kind of a lack of structure and waking up times, people were waking up at different times of the day. So a goal might be, well, I don't want to sleep in late on weekdays. mm, it's okay, I get the goal, but it's negatively stated and it's not very specific. So a better goal, I've written it down here. I will wake up at 6:45 a.m. Monday to Friday. And it's one sentence, it's specific, it gives times, and it's positively stated rather than talking about what you don't want to do. You talk about what you do want to do. So on the slide here, I've written my goal. I'd circled career. I want my percentage to go up 90 to 95, and I'm going to state it positively. So it's, I will find at least 2 online courses or workshops in the area of coaching and counseling by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. And it's positively stated. It's very precise. It gives times, and it shows a connection to the other parts of my life that were missing, which was, making the connections and the relationships. Those were also down. So looking at the wheel first helped me to hone in, look at career, and connect areas that would help me hopefully have a more vibrant, happy career life, because it's kind of gone down a little bit during these strange times. So yeah, the checklist is there. It's specific. The time and amounts are clearly stated. It's measurable. I say 2 online courses or workshops. It's attainable. I do have the resources, and that's a really important part when you're making the goal, is do you have the resources, whether it's in time, money, people, anything like that. Do you have the resources available to make it an attainable goal? And I do for this, because really what I need is the internet to search these possible workshops that might be coming up. Is it relevant? Yeah. It's, strange times. So this goal is relevant for the time I'm in right now, which sees me more homebound and not able to go out and mix and mingle with people. I'm going to do it online. And time bound, that's the T in SMART. And yes, I set a very specific time. I said 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I think very specific is probably the best. So using my example and recognizing that, stating it positively about what you do want rather than what you don't want, and giving it a percentage that you would like to see on the wheel when you do this again, it's a really helpful way to make this an actual achievable goal, something that's going to happen. So I hope you had time to make a goal, and if you haven't, just go through these slides again, and all the steps are there for you to make an achievable goal. What I'd like to do now is just a quick recap of what I've talked about here. The first thing I talked about was focus, and that during these kind of strange times, it might have been hard to find focus because there's so much stuff going on around. So just taking a few moments to acknowledge that finding focus is a necessary part of each day. The next part, I talked about the levels of stress and how it might seem that they're continually going up, 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 but recognizing that in the past you have had times of stress and then it plateaued. You got through it with the resources that you had at the time. You were able to get through other times of stress. And the same is true for right now. And one of the reasons you're watching this video right now is something clicked with you and you thought mind and body is something I really want to look at, because you recognized that the stress levels might be going up in certain parts of your life. And I'm one of the resources here in this mind and body space to help you maybe manage that stress and the anxiety a little bit better. But also just to recognize that it's going to go up, but it's also going to plateau. It's just a time of life right now that we're in. The next thing we talked about was self-care. That self-care is not selfish. It's just a necessary part of what you need to do on a daily basis in order to be the best you can be for the people around you and for yourself. So taking that time to take that oxygen mask and take a few breaths for yourself first before you dive into whatever part of your life right now is demanding your time and attention, a little bit of time for yourself. The next part, I talked about breathing, and that was asking you to take 1 minute, 60 seconds in every hour of your day. And in the beginning, it might be just a couple of hours. It's like, oh yeah, I remember I need to take 60 seconds and doing the breathing exercise. And it's a simple one. It's just breathing in deeply through your nose and expanding your lungs so you feel that happening, and a nice whoosh out your mouth. Doing that 3 or 4 times in the course of a minute, it's like getting a fresh breath of air going through your mind and gives you that time to focus or refocus. The next was asking you to take 15 minutes. And I recognize it is busy time, so maybe not 15 minutes a day, but how about 15 minutes a week to just draw that circle of life and to put camp here around it and to look at percentages. A wheel is a turning thing. It's turning, it's changing all the time. So week by week, that might change. And some of the changes might have happened because you made goals, achievable goals, to create those changes in that wheel of life. And you did that yourself. You took the time. And that's where the SMART comes in. SMART, it's about making those goals achievable by stating them positively, by setting a percentage that you want, and looking closely at what you need in this time right now. So I hope that this video helped a little bit. And in the next slide, I'll give you a little bit more information about how to contact me and a little bit more information about other resources that might be available to you. So I'd like to give a big shout out and a thank you to the Mind and Body Space at JALT 2020 online, the communities of teachers and learners, and I'm really happy to be a part of this community. I am a teacher and I'm also a learner. I guess they go hand in hand. I'd like to extend an invitation to you to read the slide there. My email address is on there if you'd like to contact me in person to schedule an appointment. There's also the Tokyo English Lifeline if you're experiencing any serious mental health issues, and the email address is also there, and you can contact them immediately. So best of luck at JALT 2020. I don't know if you're watching this at the very beginning of the conference, in the middle, or at the end. Regardless, I hope that it was a good conference. It is a good conference. It will be a good conference. And best of luck with all of your goal setting. And everybody, please stay healthy out there. Thank you very much.